Good evening, everybody. Hi. My name is Jared Grant. I work here at Google on the hardware team. Thank you so much for coming to the Made by Google open house. Are you guys having fun? Liking our new products? We got new Pixels. We got that cool new home, our slate. It's good? Great. Well, thank you again for coming to this great space. One of the things we want to do is invite amazing people to come chat with us that we admire and inspire us every day. So I want to welcome Sade Lythcott here tonight. Sade is the, give her a round of applause. Woo!
You guys too.
Sade, you are the CEO of the National Black Theater here in New York City, up in Harlem.
Yeah.
For everyone who doesn't know what that is, can you talk a little bit about what that theater is and how you're connected to it?
Sure. So the National Black Theater is the oldest black theater in New York, founded in 1968 by my mother, and the height of the civil rights movement and the black arts movement. And so she moved the family to Harlem and started this theater, and the kind of the prompt of this crazy experiment that is black theater is like, what would it be like if we told our own stories unapologetically for the sole purpose of human transformation, black liberation, and activating citizens to become full kind of activists in their daily practice. So it's this beautiful intersection of art and civic engagement, social justice. And we've been on 125th and 5th Avenue, if ever you travel up to Harlem, for the last 50 years. We're celebrating 50 years now, and thank you.
Woo!
I know, we look so young, but we really are half a century old. And so that's really the National Black Theater. Our focus is on contemporary African-American playwrights who are writing stories, everything from sci-fi to musicals, really opening the lanes for what black theater can be with a community focus.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
I love that. We were talking previously, and you're really good friends with and collaborated with Cleo Wade, who helped design some of our space here. And you guys have talked a lot about how art should really have this like kind of restorative purpose.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about what that means, what it means for your place and things?
Yeah. So one of the programs at MBT, and probably the prompt of everything, is really to push up against the daily kind of assault that we all feel, whether it's from the inundating information, that the nonstop, relentless pressures of life. That if everything you create comes from a space of restoration, that the power of transformation is always in your hand. And so one of the things Cleo, whose poetry I think is on the slate walls, she works a lot with affirmations, and she's on our board at National Black Theater. And some of the projects that we work on really focus on how do we make restorative justice, how do we make restorative art and still make it interesting and still make it provocative and still make it worthy of people asking questions and all the beautiful agitating things that art does. But if your goal and the seed thought of everything you do is to help folks heal, then whatever grows out of it will have those will bloom in that way. And so restoration and restorative narratives become super essential. And it's actually like the bite-sized way we think everyone can become active citizens is really thinking about restoration and how we restore ourselves, our community, and each other through whatever it is that we create and make.
That's amazing. I love all of that, and I think more and more we're seeing, performers and comedians even, how are they injecting these more personal and vulnerable and authentic stories into something like comedy? And like the trick is finding that tension, right? Of bringing those kind of serious, sometimes dark topics into this like performance. Performance art, which I think is so amazing that you guys have been doing that for so long, and continuing to do that. You also talk about your space itself, being this safe space and this restorative space. You use some great language. Can you talk a little bit about the physical space and what you do with it as part of the show and part of your experiences?
So in 1983, so the building that we own on the corner of 5th Avenue and 125th Street is actually 50 years ago. The National Black Theater started there with the Studio Museum of Art. So we're both turning 50 together. We both were renting space in this old jewelry factory. And in 1983, there was a catastrophic fire that left the Studio Museum of Harlem homeless and the National Black Theater. My mom, Dr. Barbara Ann Tier, saw it as an opportunity. And I think that's a wonderful lesson that, you know, the crux of the biggest tests in your lives turn into your biggest testimonies. So when the theater burned down to the ground, she was like, oh, it's the perfect opportunity to buy it. And I want to buy it because it's the most famous address in the world. Yeah. Which I think is hilarious because like Harlem in the 80s was like riddled with crack, riddled with poverty. And here's this like black crazy lady who I love saying it's the most famous address in the world. And we live in New York City, right? It's like Empire State Building, right. World Trade. She's like, no, this burnt out building. And she said it was the most famous address in the world because you could go anywhere in the world and say 5th Avenue and everybody thinks New York City, opulence, you know? And you can say 125th Street and instantaneously you know Harlem, you know black culture. So she wanted to buy the intersection of the two and build a temple of liberation and transformation for our community. And so that's what we've done. And so if you come visit us, which I hope you all do, what you'll see is a space that has been coded. Technology and innovation was really important to our practice. Yeah. That literally the walls are coded for the experience we hope that you'll have, from our artwork to the interactive qualities of some of our dramaturgy lobbies. So yeah, our spaces, we say we want you to feel 3 things when you come to NBT: to feel seen, to feel safe, and to feel sacred. And if we do that, we've done our job.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You also talk about the audience that you have. Although your theater spaces, supports black playwrights and black performers, you have a very diverse audience. And has that diversity, have you heard any interesting feedback or gotten any good stories about having that kind of people bump up against that narrative maybe they're not used to being part of?
Yeah, so I think all great art is collaborative in some way, and whatever is in the news, whatever is on your device, you can come to NBT and have the opposite relationship with those images, because I think it's really important that we own our own narratives. And so even though our focus is so very specific, our audience and our performers are very diverse. And I think that we get such a diverse audience in age, in ethnicity, in culture, because we're having honest conversations. Yeah. We're having authentic, unapologetic conversations about stuff that affects us on a day-to-day basis. And so the funny thing is, we get a lot of people who've never been to Harlem. They ventured up, they're a little bit nervous to come to the National Black Theater and see like this play on mass incarceration. That's a comedy. And they're like, what is this crazy thing? I read about it in the Times, but is there a space for me? And so one of the things that we do is something called holistic producing. So there's a play. We tease out a social justice or social impact theme, blow it up into a dramaturgical lobby exhibit, which is interactive and innovative. And so you come in, you wait to go to see the theater, taking in the lobby exhibit, you see the play, and afterwards we have like a post-show, turns into a town hall. And that's the best part, where the diversity really comes into play, because we like to hand the art making over to the audience. And so you have people that would never speak to each other otherwise in this very vulnerable place. They're either crying or laughing, they've lent each other tissues, whatever. And then we get to talk about how it made us feel. And my prompt is always to lean into the discomfort, because the magic of it is on the other side. And that's also kind of like Cleo's work. It's to find yourself right, so right, where you are. And in that space of feeling right, allow yourself to feel safe enough to journey and lean into something that feels uncomfortable, because there is a magic when we meet each other in the middle. And so that's what happens really with the different audiences and our work.
I love that. I mean, I think, we were talking about this previously too. It's, sometimes when you get to that uncomfortable spot about a topic, I'm a white man and I want to engage my black girlfriend about what it's like to be a black woman, and I'm afraid sometimes am I allowed to ask her? Am I allowed to engage her? It's going to be uncomfortable, and as soon as we do lean into that and get through that, now all of a sudden we have a real conversation together.
Yeah.
It's so great that you are, running a space that's doing that and putting that out there.
Yeah. I will just say this really closely too. It's like if you look at music, which is the most obvious space, everybody listens to hip hop. Everybody listens to rock and roll. And my mom was like, there's a science and secret to soul. Like when the Beatles sing, everybody screams. When James Brown does his dance and sings, everybody loses it. Yeah. So there is also, just as a point of clarity, there's also this universality that comes when people say and speak and create art that is truthful. Yeah. It transcends, and that's the best part of it all. It transcends race. It transcends gender. It transcends economic situations, because pain is pain, love is love, And so what we find is, even though the topics feel like they're very specific to our community, the themes and the honesty around them are really for everybody, and they interact with it from that point.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we also have something else in common. We both started out not doing what we're doing right now. We both actually started in fashion. I went to FIT, and you worked in the fashion world for a while. Can you talk a little bit about kind of jumping from fashion to kind of social justice theater and what that's like for you?
We were talking about this on the phone.
Yeah.
So my career up until the last 10 years was in fashion. And it was something I've literally had a passion for my whole life. And it's the funny thing about getting old. Life is for the living. I always saw fashion as the goal. And I don't know how many people have had that experience where your whole life you thought, if I could only get there. And then you get there and you're like, it's okay. So that was fashion for me. So much of, I cut my teeth in New York, in New York fashion's world, being a stylist and a designer and working for really shiny, beautiful celebrities. But I was always clear something was missing. And so 10 years ago when my mom passed, I had this opportunity that I didn't want. But I leaned into the discomfort of taking over the theater, and I've really found my life's purpose and work.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you've been doing that now for a decade or so. What's next for the National Black Theater? What's on your agenda? Anything you want to plug or talk about?
We're really excited. We're redeveloping our property. So one of the beauties of buying the city block in '83 was that we own it. And as Harlem and New York, and probably so many of our communities, go through a really hard journey of gentrification, owning a piece of the neighborhood and the community I grew up in has been essential. So we're redeveloping our property. We're building 2 brand new theaters. We're doing residential, hotel, retail. We're really creating a hub for what it is to be Present Pulse Theater in New York on the corridor of 125th and 5th. And for the period of time that we're homeless, which sounds crazy, we're taking that kind of our production style into the world. So we're opening the National Black Theater of Sweden in November.
Wow.
We're developing a new musical in South Africa. And then we're producing all over the city with partnerships with the Apollo and the Public Theater. So lots going on, even though we are going through a transition ourselves.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. We probably have time for one question or so. Does anyone have a question for Sade before we kind of wrap up our chat? We open it to you. We have a mic. Yes.
What's the favorite piece that you've done at your theater?
Oh, that's such a great question.
Ooh.
My favorite piece at the theater. Well, I will say this. We did the world premiere of a show called Detroit 67 by Dominique Morisseau, and she just won the MacArthur Award the MacArthur Genius Award this week. So for us, I think our biggest rewards and a play that we did the world premiere of last year. Was the only off-Broadway play to be nominated for, it was called Kill Move Paradise. That playwright, as a result of us producing that play, just got another huge prize and was nominated for all these Drama Desk Awards. So I think my biggest joy in what I do is to see the most marginal of voices get a platform that in turn helps transform the way all of us see the world. So I would say those two are sitting with me right now because they've been in the news.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you.
Thanks for the question.
I want to thank you so much for coming out and joining us. You're such an inspiration. Your theater's an inspiration. I can't wait to see something else there in the near future. Before the space gets taken away and I have to go find someplace else, I want to go check it out before it changes.
Yeah.
Great. So thank you again for coming, and thank you all for listening to our chat.